So what happens in the life of a child when the father is not present? Well, normally what happens is that the streets will actually take over. Is there a difference between a child being groomed by a father or a male figure or being groomed by the streets? There actually is a difference. See, a father will teach a child how to have respect, discipline, and direction, whereas the streets will teach the child anger, survival mode, and how to have an ego. And these are the two opposites of a coin. You see, in the streets, there are a lot of things that children learn that are actually negative, because the streets don't know any better but accept to be negative. For instance, I'll make you an example. When I was growing up, we used to go to a school in Joburg with my friends, and we'd catch a train in the morning to go to school, and then in the afternoon we would return. Now, the school that we used to go to, it was compulsory for one to wear a tie. So in the morning when we left, we looked neat, we'd go to school, and that is that. So in the afternoon when we came back, the jitas would often take off their tie, They'd often take out their shirts, They untuck their shirts, because they always had this line, I'm not a bari, I'm not an idiot, how are the gents gonna take me at home when I get there and I'm all tied up and I'm all neat and stuff. This stuff doesn't work, Baba, And that was the culture that they actually became part of now. And I never understood as to why is there a need for one to actually do that. But that was the grooming, and the grooming had begun because the streets were already teaching them a certain behavior, and the one that we were conducting was not the behavior of the street. And some of them actually graduated from that because some of them ended up in prison and some of them actually ended up shot. One of the guys was shot dead during a burglary. And you would ask yourself what he was doing there, because he came from a good home. He came from a good home, and his mother was doing her level best to make sure that he had the best education, he had the best clothing, he had everything that he needed to guide him to the next level of his life. But because he wanted to fit in and exist in the streets, he ended up being dragged into the streets and following that path. So these are the things that normally happen. So you grow up and you learn in the streets that actually material means more than anything. So those are the principles of the street. You have to have material. It doesn't matter if you can afford those things or not, but you have to have them. That is why when you go to the streets, you learn that a lot of people are living way beyond their means. And people are making good money, but they are living way beyond their means. You also learn that actually women are objects in the streets. So these are objects of bragging, that's it. So you get a car and then you get women, but you have to have different women because there's no purpose that is certain in terms of relationships. So most children in the streets are a product of just vibes, They were not planned. There was no situation where the father and the mother sat there at a date and they discussed as to what they want to mean to each other and how are they going to raise these kids and whatnot. That's not actually the goal in the streets. In the streets, it's about more women, more children here and there, and then you get your street cred, and then you are respected, If you can pick a fight, especially unnecessary fights, and win them, the streets will respect you because that is what the streets grooms you to do. So, having a father at home who is present-minded, that is, or having a male figure in your life who is present-minded avoids you becoming that, or rather you following those paths, because the streets are continuously creating a mess. The streets are continuously creating a mess. And here's the thing. When you grow up in the streets, because the street has a certain behavior that exists to it, you attack everything that is against what the streets have taught you. You don't want to be accountable for anything, because the streets have taught you that you cannot be held accountable for your behavior. This is how life goes. And it is difficult to believe that there is a life outside there where people are doing things differently, because this is what the streets have taught you. The streets will teach a lot of young men that the best achievement that you can have is a nice back room at home, and a nice car, and that's what women look forward to in a man, He has to have a nice car. He has to have a nice bedroom at home. They don't teach you, or rather show you far beyond. You don't get to see what other men are doing. And what other men are doing out there is actually shaping their lives and shaping the lives of their children because of presence. And that is an approach that you cannot give if you're not familiar with it, because the streets do not actually teach you that. So these are some of the challenges that happen when a child is being groomed by the streets, you know. They respect the value of somebody's shoe more than anything, you know. They respect the value of somebody's alcohol more than anything, you know. They respect material things more than anything. So, and most of the time they don't have a sense of belonging. So they go around looking for a sense of belonging. And the sense of belonging that they find is in material things. The more they cannot afford something, the better for them. Because that is the structure that actually exists when the streets are taking over and the streets are grooming these kids. So it is far important for children to have men, even if the man is not a father per se, but a man who can actually step in and say, let us try and reshape this child's life so that the streets don't take over. And when the streets take over, so much goes wrong, because the very same parents that actually, the very same present mothers get to deal with a new chapter in their child's life, in the sense that they carry these children's responsibilities for life. For example, they have to fight with these men because these men don't want to buy electricity because this is home. These men don't want to pay rent because this is home. These men don't want to buy groceries because this is home. And often you hear street stories in the streets, you know. No, agents, I'm renovating my mother's house. And normally that time the mother is actually the one that is renovating their house, because this one just lives for the streets to impress girls and whatnot. He's in and out of maintenance court. He's got a couple of garnishing orders. So really, the streets actually don't groom men, or rather than groom boys to become men, you know. They groom boys to stay boys. That is why there isn't much progress in terms of that, you know, in terms of the streets, because the streets don't teach progress. It's a challenge, man. It's a big challenge. So it is of great importance for children to actually experience men, because once they experience men and they experience the presence of a father, they experience a chance at having a progressive life, rather. Because the father shows up and he grooms the child from day one. And they know that in life you have to take risks, because the father teaches that. They know that at some point you have to grow up, become a man, and learn how to stand on your own, because the father teaches that. They learn that actually paying for things which you use is not abuse. There was a point in your life where you were a child and the father had to carry these responsibilities. And now that you are a man, you have to actually be able to carry these responsibilities for yourself. And you also learn that there's nothing wrong with living way below, or rather within your means. Because most of the time, when the streets teach you these things, men actually end up using money that they don't have to impress the streets. So now you are a regular at the loan shark's house because you still have to impress the streets. You know, you are a regular. You're not a regular, but you've got this credit card which you use to actually supplement your life on the weeks that you are broke, on the weeks that you don't have money, you know. So that becomes culture in the streets. That is the culture of the streets. And a lot of men will actually tell you. And the streets do not regard you as a man if you are not following that trade. Because this is the life of the streets, and this is how life goes in the streets. So these are some of the challenges that the streets actually, or rather these are some of the things that the streets actually teach and indoctrinate in young men. And I'll make a video very soon to actually advocate as to what the streets teach in terms of a woman, and what happens to a woman when she's growing up also without a father, because that too has its own effects. When a father is not present at home, it affects both the boy child and both the girl child. And the effects of that are very, very different, because they both need guidance from this man. So yeah, that is my video for today, and this is where we ended. Thank you for taking your time to watch.